Ugh. It's that time again, folks. Time to work on the pond. I'm going to do that today. It's coming right up. Stick around. Hey YouTube, this is Pecktec, and my pond is gross. And it's all my fault. So what I believe you're supposed to typically do is at the end of the season, you take your pond and you kind of cycle it down for the winter. I had a big carnivorous plant. I didn't trim it down. It didn't do anything. And actually it looked really good most of the way through December until we started to get those kind of couple of cold spells. And you could kind of see it dying off, but I didn't do anything with it though. I just kind of left everything in there. I left it all running. I had this floating plant called, I think, mosquito fern. There's another word for it. I'm going to put it here. It took over the entire top of the pond and just like choked everything out by the end of the season. In fact, I'm actively trying to hunt it down and get rid of it as much as possible right now. It really was a terrible menace. But what I did is as soon as the pond froze over, it froze over maybe twice. But the first time the top of it froze over, I grabbed the entire top of it and just kind of, had all that stuff in it, and I just kind of took it and chucked it out in the yard. So that's one way to get rid of a whole bunch of floating plants. Unfortunately, some of them have overwintered, and I'm already seeing it here and there, especially in the bog filter here. Anyway, between that and the stuff that's kind of worked its way into the pond over the course of the winter and some other stuff, it just had this kind of weird black slimy stuff all over the top of it. That was a mixture of algae and a bunch of other things. So to clean the pond, I just started. I had to start somewhere, so I just started with that. So I cleaned out all that goop and yucky stuff off the surface of the water, and I pulled the filter out and gave it a good cleaning, and then I drained the pond down as much as I could. There's some plants that I pulled out, like I had a mosaic plant in there. They do not overwinter. They're very much a tropical plant, so I just pulled its carcass out of there. I also had this lily, and it's actually been in the pond for about 2 seasons, and I'd found that it has spread kind of all over the bottom of the pond and stuff. So I pulled some of that up, and I trimmed it up a little bit, and maybe it'll come back this year. I guess we'll see. So far, it's been like 2 or 3 years. It's come back every year, so maybe I'll get lucky and that one will come back on its own. But I left it in there. Then as we move up to the bog filter, I have this corkscrew thrush, and I guess I got 2 of them. And when I went to kind of pull it out to kind of manage it a little bit, I discovered that its roots had encompassed the entirety of the top of the pond. So basically I grabbed both ends of it and I kind of pulled it out in this huge wad and kind of sorted it. I didn't like it being up in the bog filter too much. It kind of covered up some other plants that I wanted to put up there. I wanted to be able to see in there and really have some pretty plants versus the bottom pond where I really need more shade, to get more light off of it to keep the algae down. So I decided to move those things down to the main pond, and they are on little risers on either side of the pond. I don't know if they'll stay there, but I'm going to start with them there for the season. Of course, I had that big, beautiful pitcher plant up on top, and I looked down inside of it and I saw that there's some new growth happening in there. And what I decided to do was just take the older dead leaves and I just kind of plucked them off and threw them aside. And I was left with this pretty nice little arrangement of brand new growth. It looks like there's some seed pods and stuff in there, and there's a couple of new sprouts that are coming up. Hopefully that'll just come right up and recover nicely from the winter. There's a whole process for overwintering carnivorous plants, and Rachel O'Leary on her channel actually filmed a panel, some show that she went to with a really smart authority on this thing. And I think, if I remember correctly, what he said was that as soon as it hits 45 degrees, you bury them for 45 days or something like that. Unfortunately, when all that was happening, there was a bunch of other stuff happening, so I didn't quite get around to it. So And apparently you can, for a couple of seasons, you can get away with bringing them into the house and overwintering them in there and stuff like that. So maybe next year, we'll see how it recovers, but maybe next year I'll try something more serious as far as like trying to keep that plant in good shape. But there's already tons of new growth. I had another smaller pitcher plant, and I've noticed that it had just not as much new growth, but a little bit new growth. So I've done the same with it. I sort of combined it into the giant bowl that it's in. So I guess we'll see over time how those do. A lot of the moneywort that I added last year, I added 3 pots of it, and it just like went crazy. So this year I only picked up 1 pot of moneywort. I also added another plant that's brand new. It's a water orchid. I've never had one of those before, but it's another kind of really beautiful bog plant. And I wasn't sure exactly how it grows, so I just kind of put it in the top. I might rearrange the plants up there as I go, because right now it's just kind of like boop, boop. I'm hoping when things grow in, it'll look a little less just kind of like I just set things in there, more like a really interesting display. Now, of course, after doing all this work, it was like chocolate milk inside of there. It's completely cloudy and stuff. And it looks like there's a rainstorm on the way because the wind has just been blowing like crazy for the past couple of days. But actually, I just went out and looked at it right now, and it's looking much, much clearer. It's really nice. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this grows in. This doesn't look kind of as neat as last year when I first did the bog filter, but then I was adding really mature plants. And this year is going to be more about what plants survived, and after trimming them back, watching them really grow in and really starting from scratch. So put a thumbtack in this one. We're going to revisit it in, I'll say 2 or 3 months. We'll come back, take another look at the pond, and see how things grew in. You can always tell it's pond season when my favorite fish store, the aquarium, breaks out their huge selection of pond plants and stuff like that. It's always really fun to go back there and kind of look around, even though the scale of the ponds that they have are like well beyond anything I can do. Kerrigan spent a lot of the afternoon last night over at the aquarium kind of getting the back ready for pond season. Please let me know in the comments down below what you do to get ready for pond season, what you do when pond season is over and you clean it up. How can you avoid the total yuck fest of a pond that I had to deal with? I think I know. My guess is, I got to trim these plants, take the dead ones out and that sort of thing, and really, just kind of keep it clean. But at that point, I'd already pulled all the fish out. I wasn't really worried about it, and it actually didn't look terrible until things started to warm up again. So let me know your favorite pond maintenance tip down in the comments below. Also, be sure to tell me what your favorite pond plant is. I'd be curious to see what your favorite pond plant is down in the comments down below. Basically, what I've added is what I had last year with the addition of the water orchid. I also added some frog bit that I've got from, if you remember from my Floating Plants for Beginners episode, I added frog bit to my tanks. It's now in a lot of my tanks. It is a really, really great way to get rid of like hair algae and that sort of thing. It really absorbs a lot of nutrients. It's a great way for fry to hide, like if you're breeding fish and stuff. It's one of those great plants. It's kind of like duckweed in the way it reproduces and floats and that sort of thing. But unlike duckweed, you can get it all out because there's a lot bigger. It's a very, very large plant in comparison to duckweed. So I've added a little bit of that to the pond too. I'm sure it'll go nuts and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But that's all I got for you today, folks. Until next time, follow your bliss, keep a clean pond, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. There's a whole process that you're supposed to do with this at the end of the season. I think Rachel O'Leary, I shouldn't touch my boobs when I say her name, of the season. Rachel O'Leary actually filmed a, what do you call that? What do you call those things in conventions where people sit around? Panel, okay. There's a whole process for taking care of the, you look on that thing?
Yeah.
It's bringing this.